Previously on James Loves Games.
2022 was a big year for James Loves Games. I played a ton of games, 30 to be exact. Some of them I absolutely loved. They were some of the best games I've ever played. Some of them I wish I could erase from my memory so that they would haunt me no longer. Hi, my name's James. This is James Loves Games. Welcome to part 2 of every game I played in 2022 ranked. Let's go. Number 15, Kingdom Come Deliverance. When I was ranking all the games in this list, Kingdom Come Deliverance was absolutely the most difficult to place. I couldn't decide whether I hated it for being so horribly animated, sluggish, and bug-ridden, or whether I loved it for the comedic masterpiece that it really is. I decided to split the difference and put it right in the middle of my list at number 15. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a medieval first-person action RPG based on actual historical events that is set in the 15th century Holy Roman Empire. The game was heavily sold on its dedication to realism in both its setting and gameplay. In practice, however, I honestly don't think I've ever laughed so hard while playing a game. Henry's pathetic demeanor, coupled with the character's primitive facial animations, made for much unintended hilarity, especially given the weight of the subject matter in question. I'm sometimes tempted to jump back in and start streaming it again, but purely for all the wrong reasons.
You didn't do anything, Mom. You're off your rocker.
Number 14, Returnal. I love roguelikes, and if I had to name my favorite, it would be Hades. And what I liked most about Hades as a roguelike was the seemingly limitless number of possible power-up and weapon combinations that made every run feel unique and fresh, which is exactly what I felt was lacking in Returnal. With a mysterious and intriguing setting, beautiful graphics, non-existent load times, and immaculate performance, on a technical level, Returnal is a beast of a game. Everything is rendered flawlessly, even with a galaxy of particle effects flying across the screen. And the combat itself is fun, but the runs are so long, hours long. And the limited weapon variety really doesn't hold up over such long periods of time. Hades had several weapons and dozens of boons to choose from. Dozens! I think shorter runs, more permanent upgrades, and a few more weapons and skills would have gone a long way in making me want to play Returnal more. As it stands, well, I won't be returnaling to that one anytime soon. Number 13, Stray. Okay, getting that out of the way, Stray was another surprising sleeper hit of 2022. Obviously, it doesn't have the chops to compete with Elden Ring or God of War Ragnarok in terms of, well, anything really, except kitty cats. But sometimes, kitty cats is all a game needs. Gameplay-wise, Stray isn't a particularly challenging game. You walk around, knock over stuff, get pets, run from zerglings, jump up onto stuff, then jump back down again. But that's okay. We all know why we're here. Although fairly short, Stray had a very heartfelt story set in a gorgeous dystopian world that somehow felt fresh, despite being a fairly overused story backdrop in popular media. Also, the killer soundtrack set the tone of the game perfectly.
Meow.
Number 12, Detroit Become Human. I think what put Detroit Become Human, in spite of its much too literal name, so high up on my list was that for whatever reason, I went into it not wanting to like it. Maybe I drew unfair comparisons to other narrative-driven games, like Famicom Detective Club, or maybe I just thought the whole robots becoming self-aware trope was too well-worn for anything new to be gained from the experience. But try as I might to not like it, the game was just too well made. I didn't expect to be so impressed by the facial expressions and vocal performances. I didn't expect there to be so much subtle nuance to your character's choices and the subsequent myriad consequences that branch out from those choices. I didn't expect such a complex, interwoven narrative from 3 different character perspectives. I didn't expect to become so invested in these characters that I would have done anything to save some of them, no matter the repercussions to everything else. Detroit Become Human is about robots coming to terms with their own humanity. But maybe somewhere along the way, I found my own. Or not, but it's still a great game. Number 11, Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course. As stated previously, my wife and I love couch co-op games, and Cuphead sits proudly near the top of the heap as one of the best. So it's no surprise that we are both very excited to revisit the Inkwell Archipelago for Cuphead's DLC, aptly abbreviated from Delicious Last Course. Also unsurprising is that it is just as good as the base game with a little bit extra added in, and unfortunately a little bit taken out. There are 12 deliciously challenging bosses to battle, as well as a new playable character in Ms. Chalice, and even a new challenge mode that tests your ability to master parry techniques against some royally difficult bosses in a castle in the sky. My only gripe is the lack of any regular levels, as we're seen in the base game. But to be fair, I only played those to get enough coins to help me fight the bosses anyway, so perhaps not including them was a feature and not a bug after all. I also would have liked the game to be a bit longer, but I'd be saying that no matter how long it is, so it's not really a valid criticism. Number 10. Ghostwire Tokyo. As a longtime lover of Tokyo myself, I was giddy at the prospect of exploring the city once more, albeit virtually, but this time with spooky ghosts and yokai in lieu of throngs of literal millions of people. Part Ghostbusters, part detective story, part Japanese fairy tale, you trek all across an incredibly detailed and intricate facsimile of Tokyo in search of a masked weirdo who has something to do with the disappearance of your sister. Oh, and the aforementioned throngs of literal millions. Along the way, you take orders from the spirit of a tough guy with a heart of gold ghost detective that now lives inside your brain, power up your elemental attacks at Shinto shrines, battle a nightmare-inducing menagerie of monsters, shop for snacks at kombinis run by floating cats, and of course, parkour all over the rooftops in search of about a bajillion MacGuffins, the sole purpose of which seems to be to artificially inflate the runtime of this otherwise fantastic game to ludicrously tedious proportions. Number 9. Horizon Forbidden West. Piggybacking off of the things that worked from its predecessor, Horizon Forbidden West adds a slew of new features and general upgrades that make it a fitting step forward for the series. It made it into the top 10 of my list owing to its high quality in pretty much every critical category imaginable, but it doesn't really shine brighter than other games in any one particular way. It's a sort of Jill of all trades kind of game that impresses me, but doesn't really sink its teeth in and hook me on anything in particular. It has a huge, detailed open world with almost too many things to do, a library's worth of dialogue options and conversations to be had with NPCs, a robust, malleable combat upgrade system that fits many styles of play, and a story that works well as a sequel, but doesn't do a whole lot of new things, narratively speaking. But despite its few flaws, the game's polish and extensive extras, such as the incredibly robust photo mode, more than make up for any shortcomings. Number 8. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge. Nostalgia is a fickle mistress, but in the case of Shredder's Revenge, the fine folks at Tribute Games managed to not only tame her nefarious trickery, they somehow found a way to create something so much better than the very thing for which I was nostalgic. Growing up, I owned nearly every Turtles game ever made, and the ones I didn't own, I made friends with kids who did. In short, I lived and breathed TMNT. Knowing this, I can proudly proclaim that Shredder's Revenge is the best Ninja Turtles game, ever. From the characters' voices, played by the original cast of the 1987 TV series, to their moves, their mannerisms, the environmental hazards, the bosses, the unbelievable original soundtrack by Lee Topes, who I have to call out by name because I don't know how he managed to capture the essence of both the Ninja Turtles and the entire late 80s, early 90s arcade era. The hop-in, hop-out, online and offline co-op functionality is an entire jar of cherries on top for me as well. The game is short, around 2.5 hours per playthrough, but I can't think of any game that better exemplifies the concept of quality over quantity. Number 7. Resident Evil Village: Shadows of Rose DLC. Despite featuring possibly the world's dumbest protagonist, yes, even dumber than this one, I thought Resident Evil Village was a flawed but very solid game. The great set pieces, fun, thrilling action, wide variety of creepiness, and decent runtime with lots of replay value all made for a positive experience. And yet, the Shadows of Rose DLC is like if Capcom not only overheard my own personal criticisms of the base game, but also added a whole bunch of other goodies I never would have thought of. For starters, making the new content and the entire base game playable in third-person mode was a stroke of genius. Don't get me wrong, I like first-person action, but going forward, Resident Evil should always be over the shoulder, and certainly not up in the corner. Also, the DLC's protagonist, Ethan's daughter Rose Winters, was a breath of fresh air. Her character was far more fleshed out and nuanced than her father, and I didn't want to bang my head against the wall every time she spoke. The DLC also manages to visit most of the classic locales from the base game, while adding several twists on a few others, even within a relatively short 3-hour runtime. My favorite segment by far was the Mannequin Hallway, which I think will go down as one of the more memorable gaming experiences of the current generation. Number 6. Uncharted: A Thief's End. I played a demo for the original Uncharted on the PS3 many years ago, and I must have just not been in the mood for it at the time because I was not impressed at all. As a result, I spent the following years rejecting all advances from the Uncharted series. Boy, was that a mistake. I played Uncharted 4 once again at the behest of my wonderful stream chat. Thanks yet again, chat. And it was exactly what I needed to play. I had grown a bit weary of open-world games at the time, and Uncharted 4's linear, narrative-driven structure, something I usually balk at in favor of more freedom of movement, really hit the spot with its Indiana Jones meets James Bond-style adventure, with charming and villainous characters around every corner. While the gameplay didn't enthrall me to the point that I would do multiple playthroughs, the story made enough of an impact on me to have made it one of the more memorable gaming experiences I've had in the past few years. And considering the number of games I play, that's no small feat. As an aside, I had the pleasure of watching the Uncharted movie after beating this game, and the awfulness of that film made the game shine even brighter than before. I highly recommend both. Number 5. Inscription. This was, without a doubt, the underdog hit of 2022 for me. Inscription was nowhere near my radar whatsoever because it looked kinda drab, but the good reviews and recommendations from the stream chat, can I thank you guys enough, were too numerous to ignore. A few things you should know about me. I love roguelikes, I love retro-style indie games, and I love digital card games.
Ever play Gwent?
So Inscription was right up my alley from the get-go. But even all those things aren't what made Inscription so great. The frustrating thing is, I can't even get into why I liked it so much without spoiling a huge chunk of the game. The gameplay you see in trailers is only the tip of the iceberg. The first few hours are business as usual, and just when you think you've got it all figured out, that's when the weirdness hits. And oh my goodness, is it the good kind of weirdness. In short, I loved Inscription for what it was, but I loved it even more for how it surprised me. It's also super cheap for how good it is. So just go buy it already so you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, number 4, Persona 5 Royal. Persona 5 Royal is almost the perfect JRPG. Things I loved about it: the smooth, satisfying, non-intrusive turn-based battles, the heartfelt, heavy, but non-exaggerated themes of justice, alienation, mental health, corruption, and friendship, an original soundtrack so good I danced to it for an hour straight. No, seriously, I danced to it for an hour straight. The slice-of-life view of Tokyo as seen from the eyes of a high school student, the coolest, slickest, hippest, most audaciously over-designed menus I have ever seen, and that indefinable, addictive quality that makes it so hard to stop playing, even when I'm already 10 minutes late getting back to work for my lunch break. Things I didn't love? The English dub is absolutely atrocious. Sakamoto? Really? Sakamoto. But that's to be expected. The anime cringe is at times overwhelming, but again, that's to be expected. Finally, if I have to nitpick, the game is a bit long. I'm at around 65 hours in, and I think I'm about halfway done. At the $20 sale price, I'm looking at about 15 cents per hour of gameplay, so it's certainly a good value for your money, provided you have a few years to play it. Number 3. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I started playing Sekiro at the tail end of 2021, but I didn't really get it until I was about halfway through it. Specifically, the fight with Genichiro, which will go down in my personal gaming history as the absolute most proud, overjoyed, and exuberant I have ever felt from playing a video game. In fact, nearly every boss fight in Sekiro made me feel this way. The cycle of intrigue, frustration, despair, and enlightenment, culminating in ultimate victory, is a satisfaction I've never felt in any game before or since. I'd had Soul's Hand many times before this, but Sekiro takes the adrenaline surge and subsequent dopamine hit that comes from beating a difficult boss and multiplies it to the point that I'm surprised the DEA hasn't stepped in and classified Sekiro as a Schedule 1 controlled substance. Also, on my quest to beat every FromSoft Souls game, Sekiro was the one that gave me the most reason to doubt that I would succeed. But it turns out that with a little patience, some zen-like inner reflection, and many hours spent watching boss tutorials on YouTube, I was able to overcome this seemingly insurmountable obstacle and come out the other side of the tunnel, not just a better game player, but a calmer, more patient person, better equipped to deal with frustration and anger than when I started. If that's not a fantastic game, I don't know what is. Number 2. Which one's it going to be? God of War Ragnarok. It is the nature of a thing that matters, not its form. Wise words said by everyone's favorite sarcastic blue dwarf, Brock, to Kratos trying to explain how dwarven magic works. It was one of dozens of poignant moments in God of War Ragnarok that I probably won't be able to shake for a long while. Not that I would even want to. I could go on about the game's epic action sequences, gorgeous set pieces, or the sheer spectacle of it all. But we all know about that stuff. That's why we showed up in the first place. What kept my attention, and what remains in my mind long after the PS5 has been shut off, are these moments between characters that somehow feel realer than real life. I think more than almost any other game, I cared about what happened to the people in this story. On top of being probably the best action game ever created, it is one of the best written, best acted, and best directed stories I have ever seen in any medium. In a word, God of War Ragnarok is, well...
It's indescribably beautiful.
Well, if you haven't had your head under a rock for the past year, even if you're not a regular of this channel, you can probably guess what my #1 game of 2022 is. So, let's have a little fun and say it at the same time. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Lawnmower Simulator! This game takes me back to the halcyon days of my youth, when father would rouse me from my slumber on a warm summer's Saturday morn to go out and mow the lawn. Ah, I can smell the grass, sweat, and disappointment already. Alright, I'm totally kidding. It's Elden Ring! Are you kidding me? Never in my life have I ever been more excited for something to release, and never in my life have I been so completely overwhelmed by that thing, completely exploding my expectations into a million supernovae of shimmering awesomeness than when Elden Ring released. Nay, when Elden Ring was birthed from the stardust of the heavens, and the gods themselves deemed us worthy to wield it, to cherish it, to become one with it. Okay, maybe that's a bit hyperbolic, but Elden Ring is seriously, maybe, my favorite game of all time. Maybe. As I said, it is everything that I wanted and was promised, and it was still somehow much more than I expected. The absolutely stunning world, with its incredible variety of locales, the colossal, frustratingly meme-inducing boss fights, the fact that it is just so much fun. That's it. That's the crux of the game. It's just fun. It taps into everything my brain thinks a video game should be. Make your guy, fight how you want, go explore. Why are you here? Figure it out! What do I do? Figure it out! I haven't had my hand held less since I was in middle school. And much unlike middle school, I loved every second of this game. Okay, I probably got a little upset during some of the boss fights. But still, I know what I signed up for.
Greed! Greed!
Now, FromSoft, give me some DLC. All right, that's my list of all the games I played in 2022, ranked from number 30 to number 1. Were you surprised? Those of you who are regulars of my channel, probably not so much, because most of what I do is talk about the games that I am playing while I'm playing them and all of the opinions associated with those games. So it's probably not too much of a surprise for most of you. But for those of you who aren't regulars or are surprised by my list, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you liked the video, think about subscribing. It's a pretty fun channel. We got a cool Discord. It's a nice community we're growing. Think about joining us. One of us. One of us. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time right here on... Bye.